Contention 1 is the military rhetorical complex 1. After Beckett's pillar intervention, the military is changing its image, but not its character. The resolution of propaganda films like Top Gun and two sides of the same coin that would try to clean up the legacy of the principle of war by shifting engagement to high-tech global personnel operations. Believe 22. Rehabilitation of the military is usually failed wars, wargame destruction, red flag, side vision of imperialism, significant editorial control, market economy, the set of involvement, topic, propaganda value, administrative vigorous realizing how promises to serve, application, super tools, all these kids that move and stories down, on some shitty carrier, PTC, and suicide pilots, so when it comes to terms of instruction, glorified vision of military life, there are scenes of African security, Iranian children, talk about things in military revolve around, PTC, cause of violence, fabric, property, military society, depending on the CIA, accident, birth control, more than 25 films, top gun control, could be totally responsible for World War III. Jewish high school debate is a key side of this transition to deity, is expanding presence at these debate tournaments, continuing business as usual, means the critical thinking skills we use, our word for evil, this evidence is straight from the military, Barry Master Sergeant 24. National Intelligence Strategy Trooper, Export Data Officer, Around Security Cooperation, Arms Soldiers, Have to Wait, Prepare, British Ideas for Warfighter. 3. These recruiting practices are predatory and unjust, priorities keeping educational spaces free militarization. Cover 22. Recruiters at every district development code, cheats, contracts, social media, advertisers before 18, GRTC training, and reforce, specific normalized presence in the military. Education is the point of leverage, starting tuition assistance, creates massive minority rural areas, communities, and colleges, wars, no focus on poverty, draft, service, war, death, political college are together. 4. Battlefields and troops are outdated concepts, describe the nature of modern militarism, narrative control, matters just as much as territory, propaganda, false or collective imagination of Iraq, and necessitates the discussion of discourse, power, policy making, including no 23. Iraq may be strategic objectives with the reality, propaganda, violence, for obsolete targets, targets, for war, for the very concept of battlefield, outdated mission, fighting countries, winning hearts, minds, selective thinking, conflicts, after the threat of enemies, and all together, making over the book of pictures, such as something got out of it, top and rock, weakness, and violence, technology, floated on discourse, out of Fuja, his word, folk, kind of focus, foreign policy, decisions being made on propaganda, fox, going to mind, but it's what else we got, understand points, propaganda is 1. 5. The top gets asked to think like military planners, Western America, police troops, the best path by the word, and solve oncoming crisis. This thinking is the source of all historical violence. War is a structure, not an event. Action 2. Pursuit of dominance for our world wars, in the wars, violence, cooking wars, and structure, states, stress, stability, from violence, and understanding global spending, merits, specific focus, it is possible to break. The second investment was not look to solve, but to adding the present underlying all the war mentality. Contention 2 is the Hydra plan. The United States offers substantially to reduce military presence in the West States and the North Africa region through abolition. 1. Anti-war advocacy cannot compromise, must be against every institution that promotes violence, including the police, border patrol, prisons, and business as usual debate. Action 2. Du Bois' work not to was this or that word, but the truth of in Iraq is not about running the next war, trying to come across manufacturers the next enemy. Those wars are less battle using institutions that make more possible military, local police, forces, ICE, manufacturers, corporations, microfinance, and decision makers choose to invest in violence for them. These 2 is otherwise moving to get trapped in sectors of reform that only entrench fascism. Action 2. Fascism showed face of problems with the classics and theaters to make harmless with the limited to gross reforms and its counterintuitive rescue such that system must remain attack abolition of slavery, non-economic slavery, humanitarian reforms, cut slaughter, called body canceling, wash police, brutalize black people, diversity in the military, so that women, queer, trans folks, and killed slaves, straight boards, reforms, and criminalizes efforts to catalyze change, legitimize the overall system, leave the most vulnerable behind. 3. Logics of deterrence across the world, not the brink, but into ongoing extinction, evaluate the impacts of movements of productive violence, capitalism, renders racialized bodies disposable for the purpose of sustaining growth and power. Action 2. Progress competition to protect market share, predict political damage, trigger objects, to do war, enters more military, the world burns, war, terror, dependent on anti-black races, black power, recognize war against Vietnam, against the woman, policing at home, advise the other, be controlled, air, to be drone strike, Russian, certain ideas, to be bomb, crossing human beings, as well as the name of safety, parts of the message of violence, to be safe, institutions reminding the end of the world and the end of war, acceptance will sit, acceptance deterrence requires items, forces because deterrence does not work, generate distribution of vulnerability necessary for the system, capitalism, requires hierarchy, render invisible, the people who suffer from productive violence, certain names that are not honorable. 4. Our critique of the current world order is obviously not an endorsement of Russia and China. Abolition provides ethical pushback against all empire, even imperialism is a description of the status quo, question why must be a description of the future, and justification for imperialism is dehumanizing and drop the debater. Action 2. Stop the geopolitics relying on binaries, good and bad, and alternatives not crucified states currently organized by survival communities waging a war against itself, geopolitical framing, otherwise an absolute equitable world order, but the Russian US are colonial deal with inequality through police and governments of both critiques of the same behavior. Every single empire that is not like the others you create is seen as a pawn geopolitical thinking about survival of people who with the great power of their future, conceived as something to be fought over. 5. American militarism in West Asia has green-lighted genocide and fans slaves for nuclear war between Iran and Israel, staggered acted to disengage. So it's 24. Bigger water war following retaliation against Israel, US tests war for Israel's act of war, Israel's been doing retaliation, genocide of war against Palestinians. Tehran is not one more retaliation to Israel, Abraham Ho, Israel's nukes. Stop it, I think we monopoly using military means, warplanes, bomb, or rock reactor, criminal assassination by the US state, about personal war about news power out of control, knowing wrong source, supporting US imperialism, Israel, rules with the situation, escalating the widening regional conflict. Contention 3 is filled with kindness. 1. Abolition is iterative, constructive, imaginative, non-violent, and necessary, depends on the state and violence of words, not innate. Action 22. Abolishing systems, not just about limited needs, about voting, placing capitalism with degrowth, police with care and justice, war with non-violence, voting, new systems, suspending the conditions that make prison possible, beyond ourselves, always looking forward, away, pushing imagination, facing the reality that we cannot continue, visible by the few who proper reality is secure, transport, violence, awareness, becoming rage and winning, violence is one rebuild this place. Abolition is radical women where violence accepted because uniforms, born structures, and tolerable is realistic, existential, imperative, mutually able, control, justice, organizing is mostly about faith, but abolition is not through some, it's about trying things out. 6. 2 is best scientific evidence, supports the solvency of hostile international orders, constructed, not inevitable change comes from those, bridges not through imaginary reality that violence is natural and necessary steps to move beyond. Abolishing 3. Non-violence is mindset of part of the world, vast body of money, human beings, non-violent wars, social invention, non-violent evolution, tendency, by availability to cooperate, computer, creative, future violence, or non-violence, whether it's creative, willingness to go, American civil rights movement, you don't get out and understand your heart, also love view is face change. Is advocate of we can organize war, we can organize for peace, open up space to make different choices, hurt people, revolution driven by emotions, produce disorder, justice, cause of death, not my face, even viable, geopolitics, and economic balance, and society, violent, conflict, so no other than arms manufacturers. 3, operating the resolution as a model, revolutionary transformation, is ethical, topical, than traditional theology, is not what you're used to, and topical since Eugene 23. Traditional policies informed by racialist assumption. In other words, the resolution hypothetical imagination is a norm. Theology is arbitrary, axionomical conclusion, believable point that tradition is steeped in white debaters. Assumption is informed by racialist policies, movements, throughout the rhetoric, critical debate, shift the paradigm to what moves in social racism, continues to return to performance, critical debate, transformation. 4 is debate should not only be operational, but academic, foreign policy, pundits, scholars said that doesn't say what they want to hear, despite it being of immense importance. We have a special responsibility to sustain critiques of empire because policymakers will not. Friedman, William 16. Operational mindset and apathy, policymakers from raising scholarship, Washington, and North Washington, that does not say what they want to hear. The solution is new ideas, conflict, these steps, and only the academy can sustain critique of primacy, special responsibility to do so, questioning some ego and such new ideas. And violence, corrupt social movements with the question of arbitrary women's participation, able-bodied risk takers, non-violent threat figures, and non-violent society, anything else revered ethical issues. Bar 8. Violence issues against non-violent major reaction against attacks, human purpose, will be to shift women, children, elderly people with disabilities can participate in non-violent society, methods to replicate the broad experience of moving without violence.
What does the affirmative do?
So, we wrote a plain text, which details that we support an abolitionist movement, which would...
Cool. What's an abolitionist movement?
Yeah, okay, so a few things. First, I would define abolition as 2 things, constructive and destructive. So, it's about taking down current institutions of state violence.
Okay, so how do you take down current state violence, forms of state violence?
So, a few things. First, we would create local transformative justice, so things like local banking operations, local food distribution.
Okay, so like mutual aid programs.
Sure, that's something Anderson mentioned, but also, we don't know exactly what the future will look like, because as they say, abolition is iterative, so we learn from mistakes. So if something doesn't work, we acknowledge that, we change our strategy, and we move forward.
Okay, so in the world of the affirmative, the state still exists?
Yes, abolitionists are thoroughly engaged with institutions and seek to change the state.
So if these institutions are actively violent upon people, why should we still engage with them?
Well, the purpose of our engagement is to make them non-violent. Obviously, we think that prisons, police, border patrol, all these things should be abolished. But the state itself, what makes a state violent?
How can we control the state? So, for example, like the one you see has a bunch of examples of how the state is actively violent upon people. How can we control the state?
So we think abolitionist organizing, first, is iterative, so it'll learn from mistakes, get better over time. But second, we think there are historical examples of individual people, individual movements making big changes.
Okay, so do you feel violence away?
Well, no, we feel an activist movement, which we've read solvency evidence for.
Okay, who promotes or participates within the activist movement?
Well, we would say current left-wing activists, maybe we feel to scale up in order to the extent that it would pass the plan, which we think is a non-reformist reform, part of a larger abolitionist program that would eventually lead to...
That's fine. And then also, the parts of the affirmative about, capitalism,
yes.
How does this, inform your understanding of the world construction?
Sure. So our understanding of violence in the world is largely based in, Marxism, and our understanding of profit as, a driving motivator for state violence, and the reasons why people are excluded from society's, democratic apparatuses. The third point under the second contention details how profit drives states into competition. Profit drives, I think that's the card that kind of details our
so you say that capitalism structures the ways in which we understand, or
well, it's not only class. I would definitely say that our understanding isn't orthodox 18th century Marxism, but we do understand the profit motive as an important part of society.
So the profit motive is what drives a lot of the
Well, we also think that racialization of certain parts of the world and certain populations is definitely matters.
How do you disengage yourself from the forms of racialization of people within different regions, for example?
So we think that's bad. We think
you think that's bad? How do you disengage yourself?
Oh, how do we disengage? Sorry, I thought you said how do we engage.
No, how do you disengage?
How do we disengage? So engagement with the state, local activist movements, the kind of non-violent organizing that we've seen in the past, and scaling it up for the future.
The 3 pillars of social death define the slave nature of blackness, explaining how blackness is always situated in its awkward accumulation of fungibility in civil society, excluded from humanity. Order 17. The slave is legally made a commodity. They're precluded from the category of humanity, including humanity, predicate their social recognition, so to whom the valuation of life is slave is socially dead, which is violence, mutilating, attacks, not recognized, and the male structure is broken apart, truly slaughter for any other action, finding their ontology. The slave experience of slaveness is an accumulation of fungibility, emancipation, not get freedom, instead of reorganized domination. The same relation of slavery made no help, the equation of black people socially dead, giving the ongoing accumulation of blackness in the hands of the police becomes apparent of black person on the street today, musical faces vulnerability of blackness on the plantation, anti-black laws ignored by society. Black itself is criminalized, and as blackness and anti-blackness, it gives coherence to categories Movements critiques neoliberals, homosphere, blacks' relation to suffering that black people experience federally punishment, not because of the particular political economy that designs the capital they are subject to premature death because they are black, and IR scholarship, epistemology, and theorizing participants in erasure of black history and subjugation of black African and African political actors, book 18. IR theory, somebody by Western scholars trying theory fixation with the modern state is part of the problem. IR continues to be influenced by anti-black history, erasure of centuries of power consolidation and state formation. IR struggles with basis and racial bias, failing to examine African states and political actors as subjects and not simply objects. Below the analysis on African-China relations, critique China's exploitation of African natural resources demands we re-examine the relationships, political and security architectures, and reformism and so form of cruel optimism and should be rejected. All of the lines from the money see in the explanation as to how they try and reform the state and still exist under the branch of the state just proves the ways in which they are attempting to keep black people complicit within the structure of civil society, and thus the alternative is called for the end of the coherent world. Black necessitates a focus against this world because civil society is always parasitic to liberation, making it impossible that general movements and coalitions are not enough. Voters in 20. There is something to black that makes it essential to the destruction of civil society. There's also something to civil society that makes it essential to the destruction of the black submissionality of abandonment face civil society and not be liberated. Black suffering is not a function of performance of civil society, but existence of civil society, coalition, social movements, repulsion by affirming anti-blackness, and rejecting anti-blackness comes first. Anything else is a reproduction of black social symbolic and real death that reinforce their production and gratuitous violence and specific to black bodies that turns case ontological death that weighs as its infinite. Their impacts are orders in 17. Proselytizing cause proclamation identity non-black categories defining its blackness affirmation of black history being impossible affirming the violence of drugs by subjectivity, the limits and failures of rights with such reference ideologies not possible to affirm blackness without affirming anti-black violence. The attempts at recognition and inclusive society will result in further social and real death. The only way out to negate the negation of the real discourse only reconfigure rather than abolish the institution control over black subjects. Radical movements to perpetuate anti-black racism. Second off, during International Black Women's History Month, the battle should go to the team that provides the best method for black liberation. This requires each side to present arguments couched in the black radical tradition or aim not with the burden of honoring IBWH versus urgency and urgent to uplift black women's voices, especially seeing as there are literally only 2 black women at the TOC. Vote for the neg in honor of International Black Women's History Month, and giving me the win celebrates black women for uniquely at the intersections of violence and women in education, and me winning encourages and is inspiration for other black women. Second is reparations. The history of unfairness of black communities both in and outside the space requires epistemological acts of disruption during IBWH and Battle 24. Create something legendary for black and minority women, uplift minority voices, create April's International Black Women's History Month, embrace achievement, expedites wars, how to celebrate Jews, acknowledgement and honor contributions, amplify voices, don't consider rightness, consider voices and experiences of black women, and don't silence voices, avoid silencing or dismissing the voices of black women who speak out about injustice, don't stereotype, steer clear, perpetuating harmful stereotypes or tropes about black women and on to case. Abolition will always fail as a redemptive strategy and serves to effusicate the metaphysical Holocaust by connecting rights to freedom and emancipation from prisons reproduces black bondage in other forms. Also the ways in which they advocate for things such like the form of abolition, even though the state still exists. More than 18. Waters and Ponders reduction of freedom to political experience trajectories are not they are finite in the predicted on the idea of freedom of political discourse reconnaissance frameworks about recognition not through political ontology but through political experience. Emancipation deceptively tethers itself to freedom so that ontological questions are not brought in created another form of bondage. Bondage continues in disguise form and movements fail. Epstein 14. There's no movement for the abandonment of neoliberalism, no movement for the left of are capable of making real difference to the conditions that we face. If youth crisis do not have the mobilizing capacity of a crisis that confronts one of the pressing movements for levers that can be grasped as a repressive institutions seem ready to collapse. Most people have suffered economic reverses, corporate profits are at one of the recovery. Neoliberal capitalism is thriving. Leftist activism projects come and go. When the leftists know little about movements of the left people among people of color, and the impact of blackness on oppression is greater. Where capital makes things into exchange values, blackness reduces to subhuman objects. We outweigh wood. 7. Distinction between domination and colonialism is about being dominated racially, not the same in humanity expunged as the result of slavery. The concept of freedom and developed the instigation since it being human and free of violence against the black body is a precondition of the formation of the modern bourgeoisie state. And mutual aid that rejects institutions fails and re-entrenches gender basis and capitalist hierarchies. COVID proves Mod 22 at all. And mobilization from within communities is friendly societies who mutated into private enterprises, particularly insurance conscious capitalism, creating a new market and marketization and community action become interchangeable. Social responsibility undergirds and affirms organized logic. This keeps communities' dependency on aid, capitalist power, and closest subjects for gain within COVID. Mutual aid mobilize individuals rather than institutions. Volunteerism is a performance of the idealized neoliberal subject to maintain the capitalist accumulation. It lacks political agency in order to tackle structures of injustice. Gendered overture roots in the histories of mutual aid, given advice of domestic social work aid during the pandemic has been no long gendered class, race, and disability lines. As mutual aid does little to dismantle capitalist society, it ossifies it, and abolitionists failed empirically. Robinson 20. Abolition is an idea taken beyond imagination. One of the most famous of these communities was Rock City. There was no formal enforced rules, but it was an appropriation complaint of the person conduct. They stopped cooperating in the economy and collapsed. All the penetrating communities have failed, and for instance, for the one that this card says the military is not watching the debate proves that states persist institutions choose to invest in violence rather than in peace, and on like more mutual aid triggers violent crackdowns that do efforts to reject the government in August 21. Government interference in mutual aid targeted feminists and Black Panthers were infiltrated and rightly dismantled, destroying mutual aid were perceived as a threat to the government. Mutual aid by people of color led to members of being targeted, incarcerated, and murdered. I still have like a couple of seconds. Just to some like analytical link work, if we think back to the ways and cross, they were kind of explaining the ways in which they go about the scenario, i.e. we're going to extend upon the idea of reformism, i.e. the ways in which they tell you that like things such like Black people and people who are already engaged within like forms of activism should actively engage just through the ways in which this is literally just a tool of the state in order to kind of like uphold the system.
22 at all card says mutual aid that rejects institutions fails. Should we engage institutions?
No.
Okay, so how do we win?
How do you win?
Or how do movements win?
How do movements win? Okay, we say that the way in which this card should be implicated or like understood is we're directly answering the part of the affirmative that says like the state still exists. We just do like mutual aid under the gaze of the state. We say that this independently is bad because it allows for the like cycles of violence to continue because the state still exists.
Okay, so why is the state inevitable? What makes the state bad in the status quo?
Cool. So the state is bad in the status quo because it operates like within, I guess, the realm of civil society that requires violence upon the Black body, i.e. these are the ontology norms.
Okay, what would it mean to operate outside of civil society? What is civil society?
A rejection of civil society. We say that civil society is the like projection and the like or I guess kind of like the upheld like structures of the forms of whiteness. And for example, like the United States federal government is an example of like a large institution that is a part of civil society. We say that this must be rejected, otherwise like violence is inevitable.
Okay, sure. Is the abolitionist project bad for Black people?
Yeah.
Why?
We say that again, the ways in which the NEC is constructed that tells us we should just do mutual aid, yet the state should still exist, is literally bad for Black people.
So
you also told me that you're going to have like leftist activists do the affirmative, which means you're just like functionally hijacking Black movements as a means to get the app done, but the app doesn't really do anything.
Okay, so we'll contest that in a way. But
that's fine.
More importantly, what is the alternative method?
Yeah, cool. So the alt is like the end of the coherent world. The way that I like
how do we end the world?
Yeah, I'm getting to that.
Sorry.
The way that I like to explain it is kind of like an equation. So the like equals, like, I guess, okay, like for society in order to be like upheld, right, requires a form of violence upon the Black body. We say that in order for this to kind of be upheld, it requires things such as like humanist thinking. We say that we should reject these forms of humanism and this understanding, and Black people should remove themselves from this equation, which then means that the state collapses because it literally cannot function if it does not enact violence upon the Black body.
Okay, so mutual aid can't collapse the state. What movement will?
The end of the coherent world, i.e. the rejection of humanism.
Who does that?
Like Black people.
Okay, how do they? So the reasons why movements fail in Epstein 14 and generally just the
yeah. So in Epstein 14, that's about like anti-capitalist movements.
Well, but this is like responses from the state to movements. So why are the
yeah? So this isn't necessarily like I think you might be misunderstanding the like alternative as a form of like material movement. I am telling you it is literally a rejection of humanism,
okay, sure,
which means it is not like Black people going burning down the Capitol. It's a different alternative.
Yes. Okay, cool. We pretty much agree with the second author. All of us about to go to the team that provides the best method for Black liberation, which do the rest of the debate and prove that abolitionism and radical hope is a better orientation of the world than pessimism for Black liberation. And we meet their interpretation about the Black radical tradition. Our authors learned from them. We cite Ruth Wilson Gilmore, Angela Davis, and Sasha Kerr, all these people in former scholarship and activism, which proves that our case is informed by the Black radical tradition. Case, solvency. One is iteration. The movement learns from mistakes, which means every historical failure they bring up is only reason why our will be better, not a reason to abandon radical transformation. Two is revolutionary field. You should presume all people necessary for the plan to solve comply. This is no different from pursuing conservatives in Congress or the Supreme Court, but vote for the plan field is always about changing attitudes. Three is weight solvency comparatively. Maybe abolition is not perfect, but their alternative isn't material at all. There's cross-sex. They don't have any specific way to actually abolish civil society. It's just a thought experiment which Wilderson admits to himself. The relationship between capitalism and oppression of Black people will be on the critique. On the re-highlights. One is the very evidence indicates that in the future debaters will work for the military, which is an indication of why this space is bad and why affirmatives like ours are good. And on the second and third, abolitionist movements do result in harm for the military. We've read solvency evidence for why we're able to stand into institutions of violence to critique. Although when I see evidence is specifically against the concepts of antagonism that uphold structures of whiteness and blackness, but the one you see doesn't propagate civil society's goals, but rather imagine an abolitionist view that exists outside of civil society. All the two and our link scenarios are going to be about how we don't center our literature around Afro-Pessimist theory, but none of the links outline how we make anti-blackness worse or even invest in these systems. We are completely oriented against the status quo. All the one AC needs to prove is how we actively combat anti-black institutions and all theories which are central to the project of the one AC, the link page. First, the IR link. This is about Western scholars and realism, which is not us. We're oriented against realism. I see the block sheet card. The reformism link. We agree reformism bad. We read that. That was in the one you see. Action point 2, contention 2, the class focus link. We said in cross text, we aren't an exclusive focus on class. We think class is important to our analysis, but it's not the only thing we look at. See, action point 3, contention 2, we acknowledge racialization and the other ways the state interacts differently with different people besides class. And the historical success of our historical successes of abolitionist protests, the non-white movement ban cluster bombs and forced use to comply with the landmine ban, which is one person relentlessly emailing for 25 years, which proves that we don't even have to feel that many people that get them all salty, and they have no method, and the world is metaphor, not politics. That was our case. And specifically in relation to basis, abolitionist activism works. Number 19. War on Turtle on a serious basis, white activists in the 90s, arrested Khalil Lawin from the military Filipino politicians evicted the United States protests from Puerto Ricans used Pakistan, Kyrgyzstan, voted to expel, and Afro-pessimism, the blue center class, long history of black internationalism, Thomas 18. What is the difference analogy of blues and honest? It eclipses gender, never resurrects class, white, conventional black elites as vital instruments of racism, conflicts of blackness with Palestinians, no comprehension, no, blackness of Palestine among Palestinians, Afro-pessimism, condition, no, Afro-Palestinianism, Sharia would afford Palestine as a type of Africa, Fatima Bernal, black woman named first Palestinian female political prisoner produced historic Palestine, produced black information, what is nationalized blackness, scarcely means black people in or outside the U.S. colonized mainland, and permanence, pluralism, abolitionist organizing is against all structures of violence, including civil society itself. The burden of the negative is to prove that our methods are incompatible, not that the one you needed to include something it didn't. Link submission, don't generate competition to expect every activist to do everything is unreasonable. Action number 2. Dispossession and displacement through set of eagles and military bases and so much more. Our animal frames cannot be limited to a single logic understanding big picture. There's new ways individuals need to solve every piece. We need to recognize and support each other, break it down together. Materiality and theory are two trains running. They won't win a link that the app makes anti-blackness worse, but we will win a link term that the app would be materially good. We use white people as tools to do revolutionary work to let black people press. Black people are already doing revolutionary abolitionist organizing now, which is proven by Bruce Wilson Gilmore, and we only add white people to the movement. What is 16? Black lives matter exponential. In order for this to happen, the movement has to have two transforming icons, two transforming ideas. It's important for us to transform our political rhetoric with the rise of our revolutionary goals. I'm not saying black lives matter tactic that moves towards reform be abandoned, but we need because we need to release right now. We need to transform. We need to have that tactical and immediate response. In the perp is a pincer movement. We acknowledge the role of radical and violence and radical activism, but we know that feels alone violent activism makes the athlete comparatively reasonable and only makes ourselves see better. Effective movements must embrace all sorts of tactics and have apartheid, so we're at the beat of proof. Indicator 21. Destruction here, all people destroy all infrastructure, the strategies of pincer movement, violently cause trouble, government supports negotiate, support attack, actions, the United States government, so great about the no right direct action, struck the hard could easily to violence result with blacks and radical flame big governments, and he has to get them to do anything.
Yeah, my first one, what's the actual text of the term?
I guess I didn't insert a perm text, but
Okay.
yeah, do you want me to read one? Sorry.
I mean, what kind of term is it?
Okay. Oh, they're all perm do both. Is that enough?
If you're committing to that, that's fine.
Yeah. Oh, just copy and paste the text of the F and the L.
Yeah.
Procedural critique case.
Precisely.
I'm all good.
Okay.
We concede to the counter-interp. There was no justification as to why this is independent offense for them, so the flow just goes away on them. Critique is a rundown. Black people are socially and ontologically dead. We're extending ontology. The concession of this part of the debate means that you should just vote negative presumption versus gratuitous violence, which even if a black person has no experience at firsthand, there's no vulnerable to violence. Examples being police brutality, sexual violence, and hate crimes. And second is the slavish and alienated. The world's not recognized relations a black person has, meaning that family relations are not incorporated in the world's understanding of family. And the third being general dishonor, which is your dishonor, your very being, your dishonor, power, your performance of dishonor. Actually, Cole conceded all of ontology, which informs the ways in which violence actually occurs in a cyclical form against the black body, which means we're winning a root cause claim as to how violence occurs, which means if we win a risk of old solvency, you should just be negating on this question. We're also winning the risk that progress in itself is not possible, which means that
To win this debate, we need to win two things. One, our method is materially good for black people. Two, and materiality is important. If we win those two things, then we get a perm because of the one of Lotus evidence, which says materiality and things like Black Lives Matter and Lotus's personal activism in South Africa are two trains running towards the same goal. So, first, our method works. We're well on case. All solvency deficits that were extended in the NR should be 10x against the alternative. When we get criticized, the abolition movement says, okay, we're wrong, let's learn from it, let's do something about it. They have no method. And so, if somebody criticizes the method of ending the war, it doesn't learn because there's no method, there's nothing to improve on because there's no specific political program for how to get stuff done. When mutual aid during COVID, good, let's get to work, let's fix the problems that cause that mutual aid to fail, let's learn from it, and let's make food service programs that actually get resources to people. And also, additionally, the concession of revolutionary fiat means we get to say that this activist movement works to the point in which the plan would be passed and military presence in West Asia and North Africa would be reduced, which is a significant amount of successful abolitionist movement. So, black people are already engaging in abolitionist activism. Let's look at Assange's daughters or the Black Alliance for Peace. But right now, the left is parasitic on the labor of these black people, but it is less so in the world of the affirmative because the movement is larger and therefore demands less of each individual. And more importantly, we're going through iteration as the movement, as a reason that the movement will work. Abolitionists are perceptive and smart, and if we continue and learn from mistakes, there's nothing we can't do. The co-option is set. Moments of contingent resistance can improve the conditions of black life, even if they don't resolve a fundamental antagonism. How much progress is still no progress? The act is going to abolish the police, give reparations, create institutions that keep black communities fed, healthy, and educated, get the military out of foreign bases. How is that possibly a bad thing? Does it even matter if ontology is true if we change these institutions so that they don't manifest into any racial bias? Even if white people are bad and terrible, the affirmative has provided a way to mobilize white people that is good, and we should do it. The K-problem. The link debate. First, we didn't concede ontology. We have tons of examples in the AC and AR of real abolitionist activism that has made the world better for black people. Things like Assange's daughters, the defund the police movement, the Black Alliance for Peace are all getting real non-reformist reforms passed. Second, and the one AR example specific to the military were the landmine and cluster bomb ban, which are very specific political activism that we conceded coming out of the and are that proof that abolitionist organizing works and gets shit done. And more importantly, they said the state still exists. That's their only link that we still exist. But what does it mean for something to be a part of civil society? What makes the state the state? We think that what makes the state a state worth abolishing is that it has border patrol, police, prisons, military. Those things we abolish. So what makes the state bad? It's all those things. It's not that a state exists. We can make a state that is not part of civil society. And second, the capitalism link. We agree that the link in capital is incomplete. We are informed by Marxism, but we iterate based on it. We can incorporate the concerns of pessimists into our organizing. That's the Activism 22 evidence. Not every activist movement has to do every single thing. That's absolutely unreasonable, particularly because there's so much wrong in the world. We can't expect every movement to abolish civil society. We can't expect every movement to deal correctly with the military. So incorporating insight from multiple different theories and practices is good. And the last thing is that Western IR author, he's a socialist. He's not a realist. It's a white dude, but he's not engaged in the Western IR their theory and that party's critiquing. All right, no links. Affirmative is good, compatible with their theory. Thank you.
Good debate.
Good debate.
For Harvard-Westlake. I really struggled with this debate. It's incredibly hard to decide. Because the last speeches in the debate, the NR especially, are kind of like the 2NC and policy debate, and they're just kind of not telling me what I am supposed to do, what I am supposed to do with the debate at the end of the debate. I lack a lot of instructions for how I'm supposed to put everything together at the end of the debate, and just kind of decide how a lot of these things interact together by myself rather than y'all making the decisions about this in the debate. In terms of the debate, the thing that I struggled with is that the core thesis of the AF, the kind of iterative, you learn from the mistakes, the abolition core thesis of the AF, are just not answered by the negative, which means that it allows the AF to just get out of a lot of your offense in the debate. I thought that a great example of this was on the case page in the debate on the mutual aid debate, where the core thesis of the AF is just yes, failures have happened in the past, but abolitionist movements can learn from those in order to solve for the future. And I think that arguments like that against both that plus the Warren argument that you're making on case just are unanswered, which means that I think that the affirmative is just winning that what they have said is true. I think for the ontology debate that just lacks a lot of instructions for what I'm supposed to do in the debate. You have said that they have conceded ontology, but you've also conceded a bunch of the examples that the affirmative has given of different non-reformist reforms that would answer this, like military landmines, cluster bombs, things like that, which I think disprove what you are saying. There's just like no answer for this for me to go from in the debate. I think that the affirmative is winning, that they materially change the world, and that's a good thing.